Hello and welcome back to the Dan BTF YouTube channel. Here I am with another Formula One fantasy game update, and this time it is ahead of the fifth round of the season and the inaugural Miami GP. I think it's the Crypto.com Miami GP.
No, Mikey, no, Mikey, that was so not right.
First of all, let's check in on how we're doing so far this season. I'm only really playing with Team 1 here, although I do have all three teams. Science, Sealed, Delivered is doing okay. We're on 926 points, and the current team, to my great sadness, does not have Carlos Sainz in it at the moment. It has Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc, Kevin Magnussen, and Checo Perez, and then Red Bull as the constructor. Let's have a look at the leaderboards. I think it's in My Games. And how the Dan BTF League is going. Good to see that 152 of you joined that league. And well, Dan BTF sits at the top of that leaderboard at the moment with 926 points. In second place, we have, I don't know if I probably won't read out some of these names, but Larry T in second place, Patricia L in joint second, fourth place KCM, and then so on. Not to name and shame, but last place at the moment is Lookman C and UNK, but chances are they joined late, so I'm not sure who the last place person is that's been in it from the start. Now my team is doing really quite well, like unexpectedly well. I'm also like 3,000th in the world out of 1.42 million. And in terms of the UK, I'm in the top 600. So having a pretty good season so far. I think it's more luck than it is skill. But I certainly think, and this may be the case for a lot of you, but F1 has kind of just taken over all of my social media this year. If you use TikTok and you like F1 and you've kind of interacted with some F1 content, then at the moment there's enough content out there that I can just be on TikTok for like hours a day and it's just fresh F1 content coming all the time. So I think it's quite hard to be out of the loop of what's happening and all these little updates and changes, and it's cool to see so many content creators making F1 related stuff. But my takeaways from the first 4 weeks of playing F1 Fantasy, I'd never played it before, is the way this season has gone so far, and you can go back and watch my initial video, but the way this season has gone so far has kind of made it so that, the only choice as a turbo driver, in my opinion, is Leclerc. I did play him as a mega driver this week, or last week in Imola. Because ultimately most of the races have been, it's either Max or Charles that we're going to win the races. You can't have Max Verstappen as a turbo driver because he's worth more than, I think it's 20 million threshold for that. So we kind of have a position where you could play Sergio Perez as your turbo driver, but it's either going to be Leclerc, Perez, or if you're particularly brave, Carlos Sainz. Sainz hasn't quite hit the ground running this season. I still think there's a lot more to come from Carlos, and I think I will be putting him back in my team this week. But yeah, I found that having Leclerc as the turbo driver and then having Perez plus Red Bull kind of covered off Verstappen's point scoring. But ultimately, even if Verstappen was winning races, Leclerc as a turbo driver in second place will still outscore, I believe, Verstappen. So this seemed to be the winning formula for me at the moment. I think the overall leader, if we look at leaderboards, the overall leader in the game is Joel J, and they are on 1,044. So I'm just over 100 points behind. 118 or whatever it is, 120 behind them, which is, if you play fantasy games, you play Fantasy Premier League or anything like that, it's pretty good to be within that sort of, touching distance. But obviously, as the season goes on, that gap we would expect to open up. You can see some of the names on here are brilliant. If we look at, I think it's under this tab, gameplay tab, so most transferred in, and we can break this down to each game week or each race week. And at the moment, we're looking at the Miami GP, and Lando is the most transferred in. Valtteri in second there, K-Mag third, Checo fourth, and Alex Albon there. Not a lot of people got faith in Carlos at the moment. He is the most transferred out. 13% of transfers out have been Carlos Sainz. I will be transferring him back in this week if I can. Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, and Ferrari all also suffering from the transfer out treatment. Something against maybe French and Spanish drivers there, and Italian constructors in Ferrari. Highest ownership at the moment, you can see 68% of players owning Charles Leclerc. As I said, I think it's a no-brainer at this point that you have Charles Leclerc and he is your turbo driver each week. Ferrari also high ownership. I think Red Bull, having Red Bull as your constructor is a very good option. And as you can see, it doesn't break into the top ownership, but I think it's a good one to go for. Also, I do think they need to adjust the increments in which prices go up, because I think Leclerc is clearly a driver that's, in the mix to win every race at the moment, and yet his price only goes up by 0.1 or so every race week. He really does need to get into that plus 20 zone where he can't be a turbo driver basically. But obviously the way that this season's gone, and with Mercedes going the way they have and not being kind of at the races, has definitely impacted the pricing system on Fantasy F1 to the point where it doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite work. That would be my honest analysis. Because I believe you couldn't even have George Russell at this point as your turbo driver. But anyway, we'll have a look at the teams and what I'm going to do this week. Also, don't know if anyone's kind of noticed this, but I find the interface of this relatively confusing as a first-time player. This results button will sometimes be a manage button. And I only realised recently that this is a drop-down menu here, which basically lets you control what you're doing. So if you want to manage your team for the current week and you don't have the manage button, you have to change it to that. And there we can see the button changes to manage. Don't know if that's useful for people to know. I certainly didn't pick that up straight away. So we'll manage my team this week. As I mentioned, I would like to put back in Carlos Sainz because I have infinite trust in his abilities, and it would be Fernando Alonso, I think, for me making way. That does give me 18 mil, and there we go, 17.3. So back in goes Carlos Sainz. So my team for this week will be Sainz, Bottas, Leclerc, Perez, Magnussen, and Red Bull. Now, Turbo Driver last week, because I had Mega Driver Leclerc, will be, do I keep it as Checo or do I go with Leclerc? I also think, so all of these are like, you know, snap judgments that I've made on F1 Fantasy in the first 4 weeks of playing it. I think you should have to lock in your Turbo Driver and your driver roster on Wednesday night, or at least before FP1, because I can change it around so much. You know, I could see that maybe the Red Bulls are much faster in Miami or something like that, and adjusting the exposure there on the camera. Always good to make technical changes mid-video. But I could, you know, I might get some insight that the Ferraris have got a major problem or something this week, and then you can take people out all the way up, I believe, to like Saturday morning just before quali starts. So I would rather that was kind of locked in earlier, because I think it gives you too much chance to be reactive to those practice sessions. Not that every single team plays their full hand in those practice sessions, but I think it would make the game more interesting. People would have to make more gambles as such on the teams. But yeah, as you can see, I've got that choice now between Leclerc, maybe Sainz, maybe Perez. I mean, my instinct says maybe Carlos is due a good week, but I don't know. Those long straights at Miami seem to suggest that the Red Bull, the lesser porpoising car, could be victorious. And there we go. We got the rather strange track map there as well for the Miami circuit. I do think it's a slight shame. I mean, a couple of things now on this is like the most random video in terms of I haven't scripted or planned anything out here. It's just a load of my thoughts. The Miami Stadium. Way too much coverage on the whole harbour thing and the fake water. It's advertising, and if in turn that was the goal of the company, was to kind of get the attention of the media and social media, then they've done a great job. I think it was a bit of both. I think it will be spun in that way that it's just a great ad campaign, but really it's, I don't know. It just doesn't look great, but I think too much coverage on that. I think it's a shame to have a stadium like the Hard Rock Stadium and not kind of work out a way of maybe routing part of the track through the stadium, kind of like they do in Mexico. I know that's a huge kind of engineering issue and an access thing into the stadium, but that would have been so cool, and you could have had, I think it's 60,000, 70,000 people there to kind of watch the F1 inside the stadium. But yeah, that's not happening. So it kind of makes, it's like, what's the point of having it at a stadium as such? Don't know. That's my takeaway. If you agree with that, let me know. And lastly, my other point was going to be Mercedes and the whole situation with Hamilton. And I don't know. I think I feel sorry for Lewis. I'm not his like number one fan. I'm not particularly a fan of Mercedes. But I do feel sorry for him, because had Abu Dhabi not played out the way it was, I think he probably would have retired. He would have been 8-time world champion. He would have had the most titles of all time. And then this car would have turned up with George Russell and, you know, Stoffel Van Dorn or whoever would have been the other driver in the Mercedes. And it would have been awful this year, and everyone would have been like, oh my days, Hamilton was the greatest driver of all time. Look how slow these guys are in the Mercedes without him. And unfortunately, he's had to kind of endure this this terrible car and pace, and everyone is now playing the, you know, it's the car, it's not the driver thing. And I mean, he would have had the ultimate exit if this had happened and he'd already retired. I do think the elephant in the room right now for Hamilton's situation is George Russell. I've seen some arguments that maybe George Russell's not been as good as people sort of are thinking he has been so far, and it's been more circumstantial that Hamilton's been so far behind him. But ultimately, when that car gets good, and you can guarantee with Mercedes that they have the resource, they have the budget, they have the desire to get that car back up to a level with Red Bull and Ferrari. And to be honest, they're not looking to get on a level. They're looking to do what they did the previous 8 years through the initial turbo hybrid era, and that is they don't want to be level pegging with anyone. They want to smoke the opposition. So eventually, when Mercedes gets to that point, which I have no doubt that they will, I don't think it'll necessarily be this season, but probably next season, you have a situation where Hamilton will be, I think, 38. George Russell will be 25. And they're both going to have a championship car. Now, did Mercedes build a car for Hamilton and make Russell kind of adapt to it? Because it seems like they have differing driving styles just based on their kind of different results this season so far. And does George Russell's kind of played this rollover card at the moment? Like, I'm not here to, I'm the understudy, I'm the new guy, I'm not here to sort of rock the boat. But ultimately, he's going to be 25 years old going into next season. He shouldn't really be in a position in his career to be conceding him, or to be positioning himself as the B driver in that team. I think he needs to go for the championship if he has the car for it. So we are probably due a great battle eventually once Mercedes get back into the mix, and I'm sure there are going to be many times this season where Hamilton finishes above George Russell. But yeah, I just kind of think that is the elephant in the room at the moment. And I think George would have been relatively happy to lose to Hamilton this season had they had the championship car, and Hamilton could have got his 8th title, and then it would have been kind of pressure off at that point, because Lewis would be, 5 championships clear, or 4 championships clear of Vettel, and Max would be 7 championships behind at that point. So whereas George Russell's now, can he afford to lose 2 years of his career in order to kind of give his childhood hero everything that he wants? And that's assuming that the 8th title is Hamilton's ultimate desire right now. But that's my take on the situation. I know from reading hundreds of comment sections across social media that this is a real Brexit situation right now. You're either pro Hamilton, anti Hamilton, pro Max, anti Max, and it's very divisive. But I think that's also been part of the narrative that's gotten Formula One to this point that it's at now, where it's so popular. You're either in or out, and these sort of polarizing issues are often the ones that generate the most social media engagement. So please do let me know your thoughts on that situation in the comments below. Hope you've enjoyed this rather rambling video today, and yeah, I will keep this Hamel team here to see how it does for the rest of the season. Maybe I should make some changes. I do have Max in that team as well. How's your F1 team getting on this year in fantasy? Let me know. Good luck if you are trying to beat me in the damn BTF League. And if you do still want to join, you will of course go to the bottom of the table. But there is a link in the bio for that as well. And finally, welcome to the channel, because we've got a few new subscribers this month. So yeah, welcome you guys to the channel. Hope you enjoy the content from here on out. And until then, I will see you on the next video, which will probably be in maybe a couple of races time. So yeah, we'll see you there. Thanks for watching.